Hey guys, we are back today with more stories. Please subscribe and enjoy. The Crawl Space. It started with little things. Jack and Melissa had just moved into their new home in Pittsburgh, a quiet, modest two-story house on a sleepy suburban street. They were thrilled. First-time homeowners, young professionals, newly married. Life was good. But soon Melissa began noticing odd things. Food missing from the fridge, a bottle of orange juice lower than it should be, a blanket out of place on the couch. She thought she was just tired, distracted. Jack brushed it off. "You probably forgot you drank it," he'd say, half laughing. But Melissa knew better. She was meticulous. Then came the noises, scratches, faint creaks, thuds above their bedroom ceiling. Jack insisted it was just the house settling. "Old homes make weird noises," he said. Still, the feeling grew. That crawling sensation in the back of your mind. The one that tells you something is wrong, even if you can't prove it. One night, Jack was working late. Melissa was alone, curled up watching TV, when she heard a distinct shuffle upstairs. She froze. Then came the slow creak of a door, inside the house. Grabbing her phone, she locked herself in the bathroom and called 911. When police arrived, they searched the home. Nothing. No forced entry, no intruders, nothing out of place, except a strange draft from the upstairs hallway. One officer noticed a small hatch in the ceiling, the entrance to the crawl space above the attic. He pulled it open. A ladder extended upward. What they found made Melissa physically gag. The crawl space had a nest. Blankets, empty food containers, a radio, plastic bottles for waste. Someone had been living there quietly for weeks, maybe longer. A homeless man had found a way into the house during a construction project weeks earlier. He'd been hiding in the walls and attic, sneaking down at night to steal food and use the bathroom while the couple slept. He would watch them. The police found a small hole in the attic wall that looked directly into the master bedroom. On the floor next to it was a pair of binoculars. He was never caught. The man vanished before the police got there, likely slipping out while Melissa was locked in the bathroom. They never found fingerprints, no name, no identity. Just the terrible evidence that he had been living among them, watching and waiting. Melissa never slept in the house again. Before we get into the next story, please subscribe, it really helps me grow. The Boarder in Room 4. The story of Dorothea Puente. In the heart of Sacramento, California, nestled between tidy lawns and aging oak trees, sat a charming two-story Victorian boarding house. Its owner, Dorothea Puente, was a sweet, gray-haired grandmother type. She baked cookies for neighbors, attended church regularly, and ran a boarding home for the elderly, mentally ill, and down-on-their-luck individuals. She was beloved, or so it seemed. But behind that warm smile and floral dress was something far more sinister. In November 1988, social worker Judy Moyes reported one of her clients, Alvaro Bert Montoya, missing. Bert was developmentally disabled and schizophrenic, but kind-hearted and functional, with help. He'd been living at Dorothea's house for months. Judy became suspicious when Dorothea claimed Bert had moved away suddenly. She called the police. 2 officers came to the house at 1426 F Street. Dorothea greeted them with grandmotherly warmth. She offered tea. The officers, charmed but thorough, asked to look around. They noticed nothing suspicious until one of them stepped into the backyard and noticed a patch of disturbed soil. He asked about it. Dorothea smiled. "Just some garbage I had buried." Still, something felt off. They brought shovels, and by the end of that afternoon, they uncovered the first body. Over the next few days, 7 more corpses were found buried in the backyard. Neighbors gathered outside, jaws slack. They couldn't believe it. The sweet old woman who fed the homeless, who dressed in pearls and perfume, who attended AA meetings and hosted dinner parties, was a serial killer. Dorothea Puente wasn't caring for her boarders. She was killing them, slowly, quietly, and stealing their social security checks. Her method was cold and calculated. She'd drug her victims with sleeping pills or tranquilizers, suffocate them, and bury them at night. Some were disabled. Others were alcoholics or mentally ill. She specifically targeted those who had no close family, no one to come looking. She would forge their names, continue collecting their benefits, and go about her life with practiced normalcy. One man was found with plastic wrap around his head. Another had traces of Dalmane, a powerful sedative, in his system. Bodies had signs of post-mortem handling, but there were no signs of rage, no wild stabbings or gunshots. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was systematic, businesslike. When police began to suspect her, she quietly fled, disappeared from her house while detectives were still digging. It triggered a manhunt across California. She was finally caught in a motel in Los Angeles after being recognized by a man in a bar who saw her face on the news. Even then, she tried to charm her way out of it. "I didn't kill anyone," she told police. "The checks came, yes, but I cared for them." She stood trial in 1993 for 9 murders, but was only convicted of 3. The jury deadlocked on the rest. Still, she was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Dorothea Puente died behind bars in 2011 at age 82. The most haunting part? To this day, no one knows exactly how many people she killed. Some say it was just the 8 bodies found. Others believe there were many more. People who were transient, forgotten, easy prey. Visitors to the boarding house, which still stands, sometimes report strange chills, especially near the garden. Locals still walk by and shake their heads. She was so normal, they say. But evil often looks like that. It smiles, it bakes pies. It offers you a place to stay when no one else will. And sometimes it buries you in the backyard. Dead Mountain, the Dyatlov mystery. In January 1959, 9 young hikers set out into the Ural Mountains of Soviet Russia, led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old radio engineering student. Their goal, reach Mount Otorten, a challenge even for experienced trekkers. They were all fit, seasoned hikers and members of the Ural Polytechnic Institute. Spirits were high. Photographs from early in the journey show laughter, camaraderie, and youthful confidence. None of them ever came back. Weeks later, when their families in the school grew worried over their silence, a search party was sent. What they found in the snowy wilderness, on a slope of a mountain the Mansi tribespeople called Kholat Syakhl, or Dead Mountain, would puzzle investigators for decades. The hiker's tent was found torn from the inside, slashed open as if in a panic. It was still full of their belongings, boots, coats, food, all left behind as if they had fled in a sudden terror. The snow bore no signs of an avalanche or animal attack. Instead, footprints, bare feet, socks, one with only a single shoe, led away from the tent and into the woods. A mile downhill near the edge of the forest, 2 bodies were found by a cedar tree. They were stripped down to their underwear, huddled close as if to share warmth. Their hands were burned, perhaps from trying to start a fire. Branches of the cedar were broken up high, indicating one had climbed to look for something, or someone. As the search continued, 3 more bodies were found between the tent and the tree, frozen in positions suggesting they were trying to crawl back. Still, no signs of external trauma, just cold, just death. Then things got worse. It took weeks for the snow to melt enough to reveal the remaining 4. When found, they were deeper in the forest, in a ravine, far from the others, and in an even more grotesque state. One woman was missing her tongue and eyes. Another had her skull crushed. 2 others had massive chest fractures. A Soviet forensic expert compared the internal damage to that of a car crash, but with no bruising on the skin, as if the injuries came from an impossibly strong, concentrated pressure. No external wounds, no struggle, no answers. The official Soviet ruling? An unknown compelling force. That phrase was the only conclusion offered, and it stuck. Rumors quickly swirled. Radiation was found on some of the clothes. Locals spoke of glowing orange spheres in the sky the night they died. Some whispered of secret military experiments or weapons tests. Others blamed Yeti or Mansi shamans. Conspiracies bloomed like frostbite. In the years that followed, investigators, scientists, and authors tried to uncover what happened. One theory posits infrasound caused by wind over the mountains, creating low-frequency vibrations that induce panic and hallucinations. Another says a slab avalanche could have startled them out of the tent, with hypothermia and injuries following after. But none of these theories answer everything. Not the missing tongue, not the shattered ribs without bruises, not the way experienced hikers fled barefoot into deadly cold. The incident file was quietly closed by the Soviet government and remained sealed for decades. But here's where it gets darker. In 2019, Russia reopened the investigation under public pressure. Their final report, issued in 2020, blamed a snow slab avalanche, a plausible cause, yes. Yet many experts disagreed. The slope was too shallow, and if an avalanche hit, why were the hikers' footprints still visible? Why didn't the tent get buried completely? And why, if they'd merely been injured and cold, did no one go back for their boots? Or light the stove still inside the tent? And perhaps the most haunting part of all, Yuri Yudin, the 10th member of the group, had turned back early due to illness. He was the only one to survive. He spent his life obsessed with the incident, devouring every document, every photograph. Before his death in 2013, he was asked what he thought really happened. He answered, "If I had a chance to ask God just one question, it would be, what really happened to my friends that night?" To this day, no one knows. The Dyatlov Pass remains one of the most terrifying, unanswered cases in history. A place where logic breaks down, evidence twists into riddles, and 9 healthy people, young, brave, and full of life, died in absolute chaos without a single witness. Some truths are simply buried beneath the snow, forever. The Enfield Poltergeist, 1977, England. In 1977, the Hodgson family, living in a modest council house in Enfield, England, began experiencing disturbing supernatural occurrences. It started with strange knocking sounds, but soon furniture moved on its own. Objects flew across the room, and the children, especially 11-year-old Janet, seemed to be the focus of the activity. Janet was reportedly thrown from her bed, levitated in midair, and even spoke in a deep guttural voice that was later analyzed by paranormal experts. Neighbors, police officers, and reporters all witnessed bizarre events in the house. One officer even signed a statement confirming she saw a chair move across the floor without anyone touching it. The case was investigated by Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair, members of the Society for Psychical Research. They documented over 2,000 incidents of paranormal activity. However, skeptics believe that Janet and her siblings faked at least some of the events. The Enfield case remains one of the most well-documented and debated poltergeist hauntings in history. It even inspired The Conjuring 2. 2. The Dyatlov Pass Incident, 1959, Russia. In February 1959, 9 experienced hikers set off on a trekking expedition in the Ural Mountains of Soviet Russia. They never returned. Weeks later, searchers found their campsite in a disturbing state. Their tent had been cut open from the inside, and the hikers' bodies were scattered across the snowy landscape. Some partially buried in the snow, others miles away from the campsite. The victims were found in various states. Some had crushed skulls and broken ribs, yet no external wounds. One was missing her tongue and eyes. Strangely, some were dressed in only underwear despite the freezing temperatures, while others had pieces of clothing that showed traces of radiation. Investigators were baffled. Theories ranged from an avalanche, which didn't match the evidence, to secret military experiments, yet no definitive explanation has ever been found. The Soviet government quickly closed the case, stating the hikers died due to an unknown compelling force. To this day, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most chilling and unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. 3. The Murder of Elisa Lam, 2013, USA. In 2013, 21-year-old Canadian student Elisa Lam checked into the infamous Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles, a place known for housing serial killers, suicides, and mysterious deaths. A few days later, she went missing. The last known footage of her, taken from an elevator security camera, was deeply unsettling. The video showed her acting strangely, stepping in and out of the elevator, pressing multiple buttons, peeking out as if hiding from someone, and making erratic hand gestures. Weeks later, after hotel guests complained about low water pressure and strange-tasting water, maintenance workers checked the rooftop water tanks. Inside one of the tanks, they discovered Elisa's decomposing body. The rooftop was locked, the tanks were difficult to access, and the circumstances of her death baffled investigators. The official cause of death was listed as accidental drowning, but many believe there was more to the story. Some suspect foul play, while others think she may have experienced a psychotic episode. The case remains unsolved, fueling countless theories about paranormal involvement, hotel history, and mental health. The Exorcism of Anneliese Michel, 1976, Germany. Anneliese Michel was a young German woman who, in the early 1970s, began experiencing terrifying symptoms. Voices in her head, hallucinations, and violent reactions to religious symbols. Raised in a strict Catholic household, her family believed she was possessed by demons rather than suffering from a medical condition. Doctors diagnosed her with epilepsy and schizophrenia, but medication didn't help. Her behavior worsened. She ate insects, drank her own urine, and spoke in multiple voices. She also displayed supernatural strength, often throwing family members across the room. Her parents turned to the Catholic Church for help, and after initial hesitation, 2 priests were assigned to perform an exorcism. Over 10 months, they conducted 67 exorcism sessions, some lasting up to 4 hours. During these rituals, Anneliese claimed to be possessed by multiple entities, including Lucifer, Judas Iscariot, and even Adolf Hitler. By July 1976, after months of extreme fasting and grueling exorcisms, Anneliese died from malnutrition and dehydration. She weighed just 30 kilograms, 66 pounds, at the time of her death. Her parents and the 2 priests were charged with negligent homicide and sentenced to 6 months in prison. The case sparked worldwide debate about the dangers of religious extremism and the fine line between mental illness and possession. To this day, the recordings of her exorcism remain some of the most terrifying evidence of alleged demonic possession. 5. The Villisca Axe Murders, 1912, USA. On the night of June 9, 1912, in the small town of Villisca, Iowa, an unknown intruder entered the home of Josiah and Sarah Moore and brutally murdered 8 people, including 6 children. The attack was savage. The killer used an axe to crush the victims' skulls while they slept. The bodies of the Moore family and their 2 young house guests were discovered the next morning by a neighbor. Investigators found eerie details. The murderer stayed in the house for hours. Cigarette butts were found in the attic, suggesting he had been hiding there before striking. All the mirrors were covered. The killer draped cloths over the mirrors and reflective surfaces, a strange behavior that some interpret as ritualistic. No valuables were taken. This wasn't a robbery, it was a targeted attack. The axe was left behind. The killer wiped it clean and placed it next to the bodies. Despite several suspects, including a traveling minister who confessed but later retracted his statement, no one was ever convicted. The case remains one of America's most infamous unsolved murders. Today, the Villisca Axe Murder House is a paranormal hotspot, with visitors reporting eerie whispers, unexplained shadows, and the sensation of being watched. Some claim to hear children's voices crying in the night. The wind howled through the barren fields surrounding the small farmstead of Hinterkaifeck, a remote plot of land nestled in the Bavarian countryside. It was March 31st, 1922, and the air carried a bite that seemed to linger longer than usual for the time of year. The Gruber family, Andreas, 63, his wife Kazilia, 72, their widowed daughter Victoria, 35, and her 2 children, little Kazilia, 7, and Yosef, 2, lived in quiet isolation, their nearest neighbors a kilometer away through dense woods. The farm was modest, its weathered wooden walls standing firm against the elements, but there was something unsettling in the stillness that night, something none of them could name. Andreas Gruber was a gruff man, not well liked by the locals. Rumors swirled about his temper and the strange dynamics within his family, whispers of secrets too dark to speak aloud. Victoria, his daughter, was a devout woman who sang in the church choir, yet her life bore the weight of unspoken shame. Her husband had died in the Great War, or so she claimed, but little Yosef's father was a mystery, and the villagers muttered about incestuous ties with Andreas himself. The family kept to themselves, and that isolation bred both curiosity and disdain. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Andreas stepped outside to check the livestock. The sky was a bruised purple, and the shadows stretched long across the frost-bitten ground. He paused by the barn, his breath visible in the chill, and frowned. Something caught his eye near the edge of the woods, a set of footprints in the snow leading from the trees toward the farm. They were fresh, deliberate, and stopped abruptly at the barn door. No tracks led away. He squinted into the darkening forest, but saw nothing. Unease gnawed at him, though he brushed it off as the paranoia of an old man. He returned inside, locking the door behind him, and told Kazilia about the prince. She dismissed it with a wave of her hand. "Probably a hunter," she muttered, though her eyes lingered on the window. The next morning, the maid arrived. Maria Baumgartner, 44, was new to the household, hired just that day after the previous maid had fled 6 months earlier, claiming the farm was haunted. She'd spoken of footsteps in the attic at night, creaking boards when no one was there, and a suffocating sense of being watched. Andreas had called her superstitious and sent her packing, but Maria's arrival brought a flicker of normalcy. She was a sturdy woman, practical, and she set to work without complaint, tending to the kitchen while the family went about their chores. But the day felt wrong. Little Kazilia, usually bright and talkative, was subdued. She tugged at Victoria's skirt and whispered that she'd heard something in the night, soft thumps above her room, like someone pacing. Victoria hushed her, blaming the wind, but her own hands trembled as she kneaded dough. Andreas, too, was on edge. He'd found the morning newspaper at the doorstep, though no postman had come by, and the footprints he'd seen the night before were gone, erased by a light dusting of snow or something else. As dusk fell, the family gathered for supper. Maria served a simple meal of bread and stew, her presence a quiet comfort. The wind rattled the windows, and the fire in the hearth cast flickering shadows on the walls. Then came a sound, a sharp, metallic clank from outside near the barn. Andreas stood, his chair scraping the floor. "I'll check it," he growled, grabbing his coat. Victoria protested, but he waved her off and stepped into the night. Minutes passed. The family sat in silence, listening. The wind carried no answers, only an eerie whine. Kazilia, the elder, rose to peer out the window, her wrinkled face taut with worry. "He's taking too long," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Victoria joined her, clutching Joseph to her chest. The yard was dark, the barn a looming silhouette. Then, a scream. A short, guttural cry cut off as quickly as it began. It was Andreas. Panic seized them. Victoria bolted for the door, but Kazilia grabbed her arm. "Stay with the children," she hissed, and hobbled outside herself, leaning on a cane. The cold swallowed her as she crossed the yard, calling her husband's name. Her voice echoed, unanswered. Inside, little Kazilia began to cry, and Maria, pale as death, clutched a rosary she'd pulled from her apron. Victoria rocked Joseph, murmuring prayers, her eyes darting to the windows. Kazilia didn't return. The silence grew heavier, pressing against the walls. Victoria set Joseph down and grabbed a kitchen knife, her breath shallow. "Maria, watch them," she ordered, and stepped into the night. The air was frigid, the darkness absolute. She stumbled toward the barn, the knife trembling in her grip. "Father? Mother?" she called, her voice breaking. Then she saw it. a shape on the ground near the woodpile. It was Andreas, his head split open, blood pooling black in the snow. A mattock, the heavy farming tool, lay beside him, its blade slick with gore. She screamed, staggering back, and turned to run, only to collide with a figure emerging from the shadows. It was Kazelia, her face a mask of terror, her skull caved in on one side. She crumpled at Victoria's feet, dead before she hit the ground. Victoria whirled, heart pounding, and saw nothing but darkness. The barn loomed ahead, its door ajar. Against every instinct, she stepped inside, driven by a desperate need to understand. The air stank of hay and blood. In the dim light, she saw them, piles of bodies, stacked like cordwood. Andreas and Kazelia weren't the first. The killer had lured them here, one by one. Before she could scream again, a shadow moved behind her, and the mattock swung. Her last thought was of her children. Back in the house, Maria huddled with little Kazelia and Joseph, whispering assurances she didn't believe. The door burst open, and a figure stepped inside, tall, silent, cloaked in shadow. Kazelia shrieked, and Maria lunged to shield her, but the mattock fell swiftly. The maid collapsed, her blood staining the floor. Little Kazelia tried to run, but a hand grabbed her hair, yanking her back. Her cries ended with a sickening crunch. Joseph, too young to flee, met the same fate, his tiny body left sprawled beside his sister. For days, the farm stood silent. Neighbors noticed smoke rising from the chimney, bread baking in the oven, meat missing from the larder. Someone was living there, among the dead. On April 4th, a search party arrived, drawn by the family's absence from church. They found the bodies, Andreas, Kazelia, Victoria, and little Kazelia in the barn, Maria and Joseph in the house. The killer had stayed, eaten, slept, then vanished into the woods. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain unsolved. Footsteps in the attic, a key gone missing days before, a stranger seen lurking nearby, all clues that led nowhere. The farm was demolished, but the horror lingers. A whisper in the wind, a shadow in the trees, a question without an answer. Today we have a story posted in r/horror stories by an unknown user titled, "Have you heard of the game BitLife?" It's a text-based game that you download on your phone that lets you make choices and develop your bit life by aging them up. I found it while looking for a game to occupy myself during a 6-hour flight, and against all odds I got hooked to it. I'm not much of a gamer, unless you count Candy Crush, but for some reason this game really drew me in. All the options and unique scenarios just kept me coming back for more. My first bit life died as a mid-level salesman. The next was a famous musician. The one after was a notorious serial killer. Every new bit life was different, and every one more interesting than the next. One day, I was lying on my couch, sipping on a vitamin water as my latest bit life lived out his final years. He was a very successful CEO, married to his partner for 40 years, and was the loving adopted father of 2 boys. The black death screen popped up as I aged him up one last time. Gary Newell died at the age of 82. He passed away peacefully in his sleep. I let out a satisfied sigh. Gary lived a very fulfilling, very successful life. I took another sip of my water, letting the silence of my apartment envelop me for a few moments. I checked the time. 9:18 p.m. Enough time for me to start a new life. I clicked the little sperm icon to start again. My phone froze, the screen becoming unresponsive for a few seconds. Frustrated, I locked and unlocked the screen to try to get it to work again. It flickered back to life, the app opening again. I gasped as double-checked the new name. Rita Thatcher. The exact same name as me. I let out a laugh, trying to imagine what the chances are that the random name would be mine. I decided I was going to give little Rita the best life possible. Make her a CEO or a famous painter, maybe even a movie star. Feeling excited, I took a look at the information screen. I was born a female in Glasgow, UK. My eyes went wide as I double-checked the location. I was born in Glasgow. My excitement slowly faded to a dull sense of dread as I continued to read. Born 28th November. Same day as me. The feeling of dread grew as I read the names of the parents. David Thatcher, writer, age 29. Willow Thatcher, police officer, age 27. Those are my parents' names. My dad was a writer, and my mom was a police officer back in those days. I quickly did the math, and the ages also matched. With shaking hands, I clicked age up. Age, 1 year. My mother and father had a baby boy named Jensen. My blood turned to ice as I read the text again. No way. I said to myself over and over, unable to believe that this is really happening. My stomach wrenched itself into knots as I thought of my poor, sweet brother. I clicked age up. Nothing showed up for age 2 and 3. With each blank screen, the feeling of dread that sat inside me eased up just a little. I tried to imagine what the odds of all this being a coincidence was. Probably impossibly low. I clicked age up. Age 4. Your parents want to buy you and your brother a pet spaniel named Daphne. I let out a shriek as I dropped my phone and scrambled to the other side of the couch. I fell off the edge, my butt hitting the cold tiled floor. I sat there for a bit, curled up and taking deep breaths. I remembered Daphne's sweet brown eyes and golden coat. My parents got her for Jensen and I when I was 4. She was my sweet angel, my best friend for 5 years. I sat on the floor for a few seconds more, as the weight in my stomach eased up enough for me to get up. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a glass from the cabinet and poured myself some water. I leaned against the counter, taking slow sips as the feeling of dread faded little by little. I placed the empty glass in the sink and turned the hot water on, grabbing the sponge and dish soap as the water heated up. Still in a daze, I cleaned the glass, rinsing off the suds and placing it on the rack to dry. I think I'm just tired, overworked and delusional from working a double shift. I'll just turn off the game and go to bed. I jumped as a ping sounded from the lounge. It's my phone, letting me know I had a message. I made my way to the lounge, sitting back on the couch as I picked up my phone and glanced at its screen. BitLife was still open, its text waiting patiently for me as I swiped down and checked the notification. It was from BitLife. "Don't leave just yet," it said. "You must be losing your mind, Rita," I told myself as I clicked age up, bracing myself for whatever came next. "It's just a game," I tried to tell myself. It didn't help. Age, 6 years. My dad is now addicted to alcohol. I tried to lock the phone, my hands fumbling over the button over and over in a panic. The screen refused to lock, the text becoming blurry as I started to cry. In frustration, I threw my phone across the room. It gave a loud crack. As it bounced against the wall, its screen ripping off and hanging from the main body. The phone started pinging. Slowly at first, but picking up speed until it became a torrent of noise. Mechanically, I made my way over to it, delicately picking up the screen as its cabling snapped off and left the main body behind. Impossibly, notifications flooded across the top of its lit screen. "Don't leave just yet, Rita," it said, all from BitLife. I watched as they flickered by. Suddenly they stopped, one final message popping up from the text app. It was from my dad. "Keep playing, Rita." I clicked age up. Age, 7 years. My brother Jensen died at the age of 6. My eyesight became more blurry as tears flowed down my face. He died in a car crash. My dad was driving that car. He picked him up from nursery school and was on his way to pick me up from my school when it happened. It was a head-on collision. The police found my dad over the limit and halfway across the other lane. Another notification, this time from my mom. "Keep going." Numbly, I clicked age up. Age, 8 years. My mom died at the age of 35. The phone speakers came to life from the other side of the room, giving me a start. 2 voices flooded out of it. It's been years, but I recognized my parents' voices. It started out hushed, both of them whispering to each other so as to not wake little Rita. Soon the voices grew louder and louder, filling the living room as they screamed angrily at each other. I cupped my ears, trying to drown out the sounds. It grew louder, the noise filling the room until I screamed, trying to drown them out. Suddenly it stopped. A door slammed, and the sound of heavy footsteps marched away. I heard someone open a kitchen drawer, the utensils clanging together inside it as someone rifled around. They pulled something out, slamming the drawer shut as they made their way back to where they came. I heard another ping come from my phone. She was stabbed by my father during an argument. The screaming turned my blood to ice. It started off loud and shrill, the sound reverberating throughout the house. It started becoming hoarse and choked before cutting off to a gargling silence. I cupped my hands over my ears, dropping the screen as I curled into a ball. I began screaming, telling it to stop as the sounds of my dad's labored breathing joined the sounds of his knife. Suddenly it cut off with another ping. As my vision returned, I looked up at the screen. "Keep playing, Rita." I clicked age up. Age, 9 years. My father committed suicide in prison at age 38. I've been sent to an orphanage. I clicked again. Age up. Age 13 years. I was adopted by Adam Whiteley and Sarah Whiteley. Another ping. Almost there. Age 15 years. My adoptive father hit me for not finishing dinner. Ping. Age up. Age 18 years. I ran away from home. Age 19 years. I got a job as a barista. Age 20 years. 22 years. 25. My breathing is shallow, my head is fuzzy, and my hands are shaking as I stare at the screen. 25 years. I turned 26 today. I jumped as I heard another ping. Almost there. I clicked age up. The black death screen popped up. Rita Thatcher died at the age of 26. I screamed as I heard my front door creak open. She was killed while at home. Story 1. I've been talking to someone in the night. At first it was weird, but now I'm genuinely horrified. Everything started 2 months ago. In January, I moved to a new house in Port Arthur. I had recently divorced from my husband after a 6-year marriage, and I wanted to live somewhere I could be free. I also brought with me my golden retriever, Milo. At that time, he was almost 2 years old. When I first saw the house, I was instantly amazed. It was beautiful. The garden was big, filled with green grass. Especially Milo was happy, and I immediately contacted the landlord and told him it was sold. The first night in my new house was perfect. When I lay on my bed, it felt like euphoria was bubbling inside my body. I felt so cozy, safe, and free in my covers, all at the same time. Those were the only nights I felt safe, though. On the 4th night, I woke up to some strange growling sounds. It sounded like a baby kitten that was being beaten to death, combined with some gurgling and thuds. I woke up and checked the clock. It was 3:55. Milo was next to me in bed and he was shivering and whimpering, which was strange because he had never acted like this before. There was no reason he should have acted this way. Oh boy, I was so wrong. Because that was when I started actually hearing the growling sounds. It felt like it was coming from the room next to me. Yet I couldn't build up the courage to stand up and walk over there. I decided that the growling sounds could be the neighbors and calmed myself down to sleep again. At almost 5, the growling sounds finally stopped. This continued for almost a month, when one night something scary happened. I woke up to thudding sounds, and this time there was no growling. I looked beside me for Milo, but he wasn't there. In fact, the spot next to me was completely empty, but warm, which meant that Milo was here but had just left. "Milo!" I yelled repeatedly. I finally got out of bed and stood up. I slowly walked down the corridor and it was completely pitch black. On my 4th step, I saw a pair of yellow eyes in the dark. It felt like it was the only source of light and it illuminated the dark room. I was so scared that I couldn't even scream. I had no idea what I was supposed to do at the moment. "Milo, is that you?" I reached out slowly and hoped that I would touch that furry, cute little dog that he was. Then, another pair of yellow eyes appeared in the dark. This time, I actually screamed. I ran to my room, gasping for air, and lo and behold, Milo was sitting at the door of my room, but his hair was all soaking wet, and he was again shivering vigorously. I slammed the door behind me. My worries of the yellow eyes started to fade. All I worried about right now was Milo and what happened to him. "Milo!" I exclaimed, scared. I found out his whole body was covered in blood. It was like someone had grabbed him and dunked him in a pot of blood, let him stand in the cold rain while some of it washed off, then told him to come back to me. Milo was still whining and whimpering, possibly from the cold, so I decided to wash him up. When I was washing him, I could feel something's presence looming over me. When I was bathing him, I felt someone watching. When I was combing his fur, I felt someone watching. When I dried him, I felt someone watching. Finally, when I was done with Milo, it was dawn. I hadn't gotten a good night's sleep, so I went straight to bed again. When I woke up, it was in the middle of the night again. Somehow, I had slept from dawn to the next night. Was this possible? I wasn't a very deep sleeper. And then it hit me. What if I hadn't slept for so long? In fact, Milo's incident was just a dream. I had always had crazy dreams, but this dream felt too realistic to believe. I looked to the spot beside me on my bed, and there Milo was, all cozied up and sleeping. I couldn't understand anything that was happening to me. I felt scared and unsafe. At this point, I just fell asleep again. This time, I woke up during the afternoon. I went out of bed to make a coffee for myself, and Milo came along with me. Everything seemed great, only the nighttime was when weird things happens. I was scrolling on Instagram when I found this app that allows you to track your sleep and record anything that you say or do in the middle of the night. That night, I set the app up after having dinner. I ate a fulfilling meal of McDonald's and went straight to bed after. I placed my phone in the bedside table and went to sleep. That night, I slept soundly, my first time in a month. When I woke up, it was morning, and I was feeling as happy as a goose. I checked my sleep tracker. I had slept for 8 hours straight, and it said, "Well done," on the app. I played the recordings that was recorded during the night. What it recorded shocked me. In the middle of the night, I could hear sounds of muffled rustling, like someone was looking through my drawers. That was shocking, but not the scariest part. The scariest part was, I heard my own voice asking, "What are you doing?" and a deep male voice that said, "Nothing." After that short conversation, the rustling disappeared and everything was silent. How was this possible? I lived in the house by myself, and I was sure of it. I could recognize my own voice, although I do not recall saying anything in the middle of the night. And who was that deep male voice? Could my ex have sneaked in? He did not know any details related to my address, so I was unsure of that. The following night, weird conversations was recorded again. I heard rustling again, from the recordings, then my voice saying, "Go away, please," and a deep male voice again saying, "Why?" After that, it was silent again. Today, I have moved away from the house because of my frightening encounters with these weird experiences. I no longer have sleeping problems, and I don't see or hear voices in the dark anymore. Although I am probably safe now, I still am very curious. Who or what was haunting me in the other house? Why? I will never forget my experience in the other house, and one day I will find you, the person who haunted me. Before we get into the next story, please subscribe, it really helps me grow. I work in different psychiatric wards as a cognitive psychologist. I do mostly research, but I also talk to patients a lot about managing their symptoms. My research specialty is schizophrenia. The vast majority of mental health workers lack basic empathy. It probably is the shithole I live in that makes it just too easy to abuse people with mental illness. I'm sure there are many good psychiatric and mental health professionals out there, but I barely see any. I have officially started spiraling again. I'm once again pacing the house 24/7. I'm once again being told that I have too much empathy for this line of work, which doesn't make any goddamn sense to me. No, I am not going to leave people I care about to a bunch of psychopaths that degrade and humiliate them and just stick to my research instead. My empathy is not a problem. I refuse to believe that it is, after 10 plus years of working in mental health. You are the problem. You have ruined my perception of humanity. You have turned me into this cynical, angry, bitter soul who doesn't believe in people's kindness anymore. I hate that I have to always be at the edge of my sit. Because anytime a patient is being anything other than the perfect victim, you all are too fast to put them in their place. Anytime I hear a patient stand up for themselves, I know I have to act fast before they get cornered and forced into submission in the most traumatizing, humiliating, degrading way. I used to think everyone has kindness in their hearts, and cruelty is just someone not understanding the consequences of their actions. I gave people way too many chances to say they didn't mean harm. 3 months into my first psychiatric ward internship, and I had that worldview knocked out of me with such brute force that I'm still breathless 6 years later. P.S. IDK. If anyone reads this actually, but please refrain from telling me to prioritize my mental health and get stable first. You legitimately have no idea. I'm not being sacrificial. I am being completely self-serving. Anytime I have left clinical work for more than 2 weeks, I have fallen into the deepest depression and despair. I have stopped eating and sleeping and drove everyone around me crazy. It's just a very shitty situation I'm in. That's all. My boyfriend is a monster. The White Room was my new home. But, God, I miss the sky. After a surfing accident left my classmate and me stranded in the Mediterranean Ocean, a kind woman dragged us out of the water and brought us to her home. I awoke to 4 walls of white and a single glass door. At first I panicked. I couldn't breathe. My limbs numb. I tried to sit up, but I couldn't. I tried to scream, but I had no voice. Only a mouth that opened and closed, my tongue lolling. Mrs. McIntyre reassured me. JJ and I had been stung by a rare, dangerous jellyfish. We were under observation. At night, she crept in, jabbed me with a needle, and dragged me off for tests that twisted my body, waking me up screaming, blood filling my mouth. Just the jellyfish venom, she soothed. I couldn't scream anymore. I felt light under her surgical knife. I stopped being able to feel my toes, then my legs, then my arms. Numbness spread through me, severing all of me. Hey, Diddy? JJ's voice was terrifying at first. When he slid into my mind so effortlessly I tried to push him out, but he was relentless. It started with a sharp prick in my skull, then white noise, then like a skipping radio. He was there. I could never see him. He was locked away somewhere. But I could sense him, smell the seawater on him. I pretended not to hear his wails, begging for death, for peace, for pain when numbness took over. Why can't I feel anything? His cries filled my head. Fuck. Is it supposed to be all be lack? Maddie, I can't. Oh God, I can't see. Presently, his voice was fading, like ocean waves. When they bled into my mind, my thoughts stirred. Do you remember why you came surfing with me? His voice made me smile. I've been crushing on you since the 4th grade. I imagined his face, thick dark brown hair and a dimpled smile. Come over to the door. I got the key, eyes, and I heard you want to see the sky. I did want to see the sky. It had been so long. I jumped up, but my legs weren't working. So crawling on my hands and knees, I reached the glass door. And I screamed. No, I didn't scream. I couldn't. I fell back. The white walls around me blurred. Blinking, I stared down at my hands. No, my paws, tiny furry paws. Scrambling, I pressed against the door, my cry bursting into static. JJ? My real mouth didn't work anymore. The half-mutated body kneeling before me, its shark-like head twitching, tilted toward me, its beady eyes unblinking. Mad? Die, what? Is it? JJ's voice hissed into my skull, and he tapped on the glass. The shark head sewn onto him was still alive, its jaw twitching, cruelly stitched to the boy's carcass. What's we're done, Before we get into the next story, please subscribe, it really helps me grow. My kidnapper released me 2 days ago. I've been free for exactly 2 days, 12 hours, and 17 minutes. Not that I'm counting. Actually, that's a lie. I am counting. Every second feels like a miracle and a nightmare simultaneously. Every tick of freedom is weighed down by what I know and what I can't bring myself to tell anyone. 3 years. That's how long I was held in that basement. At least that's what they are estimating at the hospital due to my blood work. Time blurred together in that windowless room, marked only by the steady drip of a leaking pipe and his footsteps on the stairs. That drip. That goddamn drip. Sometimes I would lie awake counting them until I reached thousands, feeling my sanity slip away with each watery pulse. I don't remember who I was before. Not anymore. The worst part is knowing that I used to remember. For the first few months of captivity, I clung to my identity like a lifeline. I had a name, I had a home, I had people who loved me, I had a life. But he couldn't stand it when I'd recite these facts to myself in the dark. He'd fly into rages when I'd whisper my real name over and over like a prayer. "You're no one," he'd scream, bringing his fists down on my head, my face, my temples. "You're mine now. Nothing else." The doctors at the hospital believe I have severe brain damage from repeated trauma. Scans show old fractures in my skull that healed without medical attention. Dark patches on my brain where blood pooled and scarred. Memory centers, damaged beyond repair. Now the police ask questions I can't answer. Did I have family? Friends? A job? A home? The only clear memory I have from before is standing outside a Trader Joe's, nearly dropping a paper bag of groceries as one of the handles ripped. It was raining lightly. I remember thinking I should have brought an umbrella. Then a hand clamped over my mouth, a bag over my head, the smell of chemicals. Darkness. When I woke up, I was in that room. Concrete walls stained with substances I tried not to identify. A thin mattress on the floor that reeked of mold and worse things. A bucket in the corner that he'd empty only when the stench became unbearable even to him. A single light bulb hanging from the ceiling that he would turn on and off at random intervals, destroying any sense of day or night I might have clung to. The first month, I screamed until my vocal cords shredded. I clawed at the door until my fingernails tore off, leaving bloody streaks on the wood. I begged whatever God might be listening to either save me or kill me. Neither happened. He never told me his name. I never saw his face clearly. At least, for the longest time I didn't see his face. Not that finally seeing it helped. I'll explain soon. He always wore a mask when he came down. A plain white medical mask at first, then more elaborate ones as time went on. Sometimes animals, sometimes cartoon characters. The Mickey Mouse one was the worst. He'd wear it on days he decided I needed to be disciplined. I won't describe what that entailed. I can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. It was painful, horrific. That cheerful mouse face watching as he told me I was his masterpiece, a true blank canvas. That humans should be grateful for lives that are full of endless opportunities. Once, he didn't feed me for 2 weeks. Just water. By the end, I was hallucinating, seeing shadows dance on the walls. When he finally came down with a plate of cold spaghetti, I wept with gratitude. I kissed his feet. I would have done anything. I did do anything. The strangest part was how routine it all became. The terror never fully subsided, but it evolved into something duller, more manageable. Sometimes he'd bring me books, dog-eared paperbacks with coffee stains and torn covers. Sometimes he'd sit in a folding chair and make me read to him, correcting my pronunciation instantly when I stumbled over words. Sometimes he'd leave a small radio that only picked up static and religious broadcasts. The preachers' voices became as familiar as my own thoughts. When winter came, I could tell from the bone-deep chill that seeped through the concrete. He'd bring down a space heater sometimes, but only if I'd been good. I learned to stop shivering in his presence because it annoyed him. I learned to regulate my body temperature through sheer will. I learned things about survival that no human should know. I stopped asking why. I stopped begging to be released. I stopped speaking altogether around the 2-year mark. What was the point? The silence became my armor. He hated it. He'd scream at me, shake me, try anything to make me talk. But I'd retreated so far inside myself by then that my body was just an empty shell. Sometimes I would watch him from somewhere above, like I was floating near the ceiling, observing this broken girl with matted hair and skin stretched tight over protruding bones. The worst times were when he was kind, when he'd bring me a warm blanket, when he'd clean the infected cuts on my legs with surprising gentleness, when he'd read to me as I drifted off to sleep. Those moments confused me, made me question everything. Stockholm Syndrome, the hospital psychologist called it later. I call it hell. Then, 2 days ago, he came down the stairs without his usual measured steps. He was rushing, frantic, no mask this time. And his face? I know he wasn't wearing a mask. It was human skin, but no eyes, no mouth or hair, no ears or nose. No features at all, just a blank canvas. That's all I remember about his face. "Time to go," he said, injecting something into my arm before I could react. As consciousness slipped away, I heard the basement door open again, shuffling. A muffled cry. Another person. "Your replacement has arrived," he whispered in my ear. I woke up on a park bench 20 miles from the house where I'd been held. My hospital bracelet says Jane Doe. The police have been kind but frustrated by my inability to provide details. I can't describe his face even though I finally saw it, but I remember his voice. The way it would soften when he was about to hurt me. The slight lisp on certain words. The wet sound of his mouth when he'd lean close to whisper things he planned to do to me. It's strange how my brain protected some memories while obliterating others. The neurologist explained that severe, repeated head trauma can create a patchwork of memory loss. Your brain sacrificed your identity to preserve your survival instincts, she told me. Sometimes I still feel the phantom pain of those blows, the ringing in my ears that wouldn't stop for days, the world tilting as I tried to hold on to who I was before everything went dark. And last night, as a nurse was checking my vitals, I heard a news report on the small television in my hospital room. A 19-year-old girl had gone missing outside a Trader Joe's, 1 town over from where we are now. I should tell the police everything I know. I should help them find her. I should be doing something, anything. But I can't. I physically can't. Because as he was preparing to release me, after I'd heard those muffled cries from upstairs, unmistakably female, young, terrified, he grabbed my face with one gloved hand, squeezing until I thought my jaw would break. "Listen carefully," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. "You're going to leave here. You're going to stay quiet. If I see one police sketch, if I hear one whisper that you're helping them find me, I will cut her throat while playing a recording of your voice. She'll die believing you killed her." He showed me a phone then, replaying snippets of my voice he'd recorded over the years. My pleas, my screams, even my reading voice from those bizarre sessions where he'd make me read aloud from classic novels for hours until my throat was raw. "I've already told her all about you," he continued. "How you helped pick her, how you're my partner. She thinks you've just gone out for supplies." His tone was nothing less than excited. "She's waiting for you to come back. For 3 years, just like you waited." But here's the thing that keeps me frozen. The thing I haven't told anyone until now. When he released me, he whispered something else. "You did so well. I'll be coming back for you. This is just intermission. And remember, her blood will be on your hands if you talk." And on my discharge papers from the hospital, tucked into the folder the nurse gave me this morning, I found a small note on Mickey Mouse stationery. "Miss you already. The new girl isn't nearly as much fun. She keeps asking when you're coming back. I told her you'd return soon to help me with her, TikTok." Along with the note was a small USB drive. When I plugged it in at a library far from the hospital, It contained only a single video file. 10 seconds of footage showing a young woman, blindfolded and gagged, huddled in the same corner of the same basement where I spent 3 years. A timestamp on the video showed it was recorded just 4 hours ago. In the background, my voice, pieces of recording stitched together saying, "Don't worry, I'll be back soon. We're going to have so much fun together." I've been free for exactly 2 days, 12 hours, and 23 minutes. But I know I'm still not free at all, and neither is she.